Crime here is up and through the roof.
Candidate Trump called out what seems obvious to many Americans, but
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country.
Trump faced a correction that itself needs to be corrected. Has there been a big shift in what we count as crimes and how the FBI collects its statistics?
There has been a big change.
Stop the car!
This week, we investigate to sort out what's the true trend in violent crime.
How much radioactivity has already escaped from the plant?
Almost a half-century ago, a nuclear accident at what was known as 3 Mile Island was the beginning of a meltdown in America's promising industry to generate power. But new demands are forcing a new consideration. There is demand that will increase, whether it be through data centers, AI. Is nuclear the answer?
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh.
There's a lot going on up there.
There it is again. It's so close.
And out there these days.
Based on everything you know, how long do you think the U.S. government has had evidence of extraterrestrial life?
Decades.
The truth is out there. It's a question of how soon and how much will be released of the UFO files.
Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. After suffering alarming spikes in violent crime, some cities are now reporting better news. For example, in 2023, Washington, D.C. saw a 39% increase in crime and the most murders in 25 years. Now the capital city is reporting a 35% decrease in violent crime for 2024. The past 4 years have been filled with debate over the national trends. Some say the government has been manipulating numbers. Today, we dig into the anatomy of how the reporting of crime stats has changed and whether we're getting the full truth.
Get out of the car! Stop! Stop!
It's not hard to find signs that crime has surged in some American cities.
Get out of the car now! Hands up! Hands up!
Yet many in media and politics insisted it's just a mirage, that there's actually less crime. In 2023, going into the election year, proofs seemed to come in the FBI's annual crime data. The statistics showed a 2.1% decrease in violent crime in 2022 under the Biden administration.
Last year, the United States had one of the lowest rates of all violent crimes in more than 50 years.
To many, the good news seemed to fly in the face of the reality on the ground.
Stop the car!
Turn around and get in your car and go away.
But when Donald Trump raised the issue in his debate against Kamala Harris, a moderator unskeptically declared the FBI stats to be the final word.
Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice President Harris,
the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like
Trump may have known something the debate moderator didn't. Has there been a big shift in what we count as crimes and how the FBI collects its statistics?
There has been a big change.
John Lott is a crime data analyst and was a senior advisor for research and statistics in the Justice Department, which is over the FBI. He says the FBI crime stats shouldn't be taken alone at face value.
Starting in 2021, they had a new system for reporting this data to the FBI from police departments around the country. In 2020, 97% of police departments reported data. In 2022, 31% of police departments didn't report any crime data to the FBI. Another 24% only partially reported data. So you had less than half of police departments in 2022 and 2021 reporting complete crime data to the FBI. That's a huge sea change.
Where there are gaps in data, Lott says the FBI does attempt to fill in the blanks.
They try to guess. The question is how good of a job they do in guessing. I don't think they do a very good job in terms of guessing.
He points to two distinct databases that he says should reflect similar trends, but have produced impossibly opposite results: the FBI statistics and the National Crime Victimization Survey, which tries to capture additional crimes that people don't officially report.
And the reason why we have this National Crime Victimization data is we know most crimes aren't reported to police. About 40% of violent crimes are reported to police, about 30% of property crimes are reported to police. Before 2020, those numbers tended to go up and down together, the reported and the National Crime Victimization data. Since 2020, they've been going in completely opposite directions. So, for example, in 2022, while the FBI showed a 2% drop in violent crime, reported violent crime, the National Crime Victimization data showed a 42% increase in violent crime. That's the largest yearly increase we've ever seen in that measure, and that's going back 50 years.
Other factors that could make the crime rate seem lower than it is: short-staffed police departments with fewer officers to make arrests, and prosecutors not prosecuting some crimes.
What's happened is unreported crime has increased, because people say, I'm only going to report these crimes if I think the guy's going to get arrested.
Based on the numbers you've seen, what would you say is the true crime trend in this country? It may be different for violent crimes and nonviolent crimes, but what do you see in the numbers?
Well, I think it's gone up tremendously, violent crime during the Biden administration. I think it's gone up by about 43% since he's been president. And I think there are two reasons why the media wants to go and kind of claim that it's going down. One is just, unfortunately, I think probably just to help the Democrats on this. But I think the other thing, and a number of Democrats have made this explicit, is they say, look, we've had many millions of illegals coming into the country, and violent crime is falling. And so they say it can't be illegals causing more crime because crime is dropping over this period of time.
Which brings us to another statistical trick. A flood of studies imply illegal immigrants are more law-abiding than U.S. citizens.
Our study found that immigrants are less likely to break the law than people born in the U.S.
But the studies often group legal immigrants in with illegal immigrants.
Now, what I've found, I did some work for the county prosecutors in Arizona a few years ago, is on their state prison system, is that you have big differences between legal and illegal immigrants. Legal immigrants seem to commit crimes at very low rates. Their share of the prison population was well below their share of the state population. Illegal immigrants, though, had a very high rate of crime, particularly very violent crime, everything from kidnappings to murders, compared to the general population that are there. Usually what happens in discussions is they mix the two together. And so then they'll get a rate that could be roughly similar or maybe even slightly below what it is for native-born Americans. And I think that's very misleading to lump those two groups together.
In fact, illegal immigrants have made up a disproportionately high number of prison inmates in America, indicating they commit far more serious crimes. A decade ago, when illegal immigrants made up about 1 in 30 of the U.S. population, they accounted for a shocking 1 in 4 or 5 U.S. prison inmates, according to GAO. That included 4.9 million arrests for 7.5 million offenses, including allegations of more than 1 million drug crimes, 500,000 assaults, 133,800 sex offenses, 24,200 kidnappings, 33,300 homicide-related offenses, and 1,500 terrorism-related crimes. Nobody has tracked or updated the numbers since. Meantime, stark evidence of Lott's claims about crime going up, not down, under the Biden administration seemed to emerge after that presidential debate.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country.
Lott discovered the FBI quietly revised its 2022 figures from a 2.1% drop in violent crime to a 4.5% increase, making a total rise of 6.6%. That includes 80,000 violent crimes that had gone uncounted, 33,000 additional robberies, 37,000 extra aggravated assaults, 7,000 more rapes, and 1,700 added murders. Have crime statistics always been politicized and maybe somewhat manipulated?
I think it's gotten a lot worse in the last few years. Maybe over the last decade or so, it's gotten a lot worse. I mean, there's numbers that come out of the Department of Justice now that I just don't believe at all.
We asked the FBI what accounted for the correction in their violent crime stats for 2022. Did they undercount violent crime? And why FBI trends are opposite the National Crime Victimization Survey. They didn't answer those questions, but said there will be increasing transparency, and big cities like New York and LA resumed reporting their crime statistics to the FBI in 2023, when the FBI claims again that violent crime went down. When we come back, the U.S. going nuclear. A half-century ago, nuclear power was seen as a promising source of energy for the future, but war and disasters quickly changed public opinion, and the promise of nuclear power became cursed. Now big tech companies want to bring it back to life. Scott Thuman reports on the renewed interest in nuclear power and the challenges that lie ahead.
It was the first step in a nuclear nightmare. As far as
in March of 1979, one nuclear reactor at 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania suffered a meltdown, an uncontrolled nuclear reaction.
This is easily the most serious accident in the licensed reactor program.
Tens of thousands left.
Panic in the surrounding area was only compounded by a meltdown in crisis management, conflicting reports, and confusion by authorities on exposure and evacuation. All fueled by a disaster film,
The China Syndrome,
about a nuclear emergency released just weeks before the 3 Mile Island accident. And nuclear power that grew out of the oil price shock of the early 70s, producing almost 10% of America's electricity, took a hit. Until now.
There's a new plan to power up a reactor at the site of this country's worst commercial nuclear disaster.
New demand, changes in safety technology, and a search for clean energy alternatives are putting 3 Mile Island and nuclear power back on the map. In a bold move, Microsoft signed a 20-year deal to bring 3 Mile Island's infamous facility back online, which has been dormant since 2019 because other energy sources were more cost-effective. The tech giant will purchase 100% of the energy generated by the plant's remaining nuclear reactor, marking the first time a nuclear reactor in the U.S. has been restarted after closing. There is an almost exponential increase in demand for electricity and a new burden on the grid: artificial intelligence. Companies like Amazon and Google are looking for fossil fuel-free ways to power energy-hungry data centers, which are forecast to consume 9% of the nation's power supply by 2030. That is double the demand of today.
Nuclear power is going to be something we have to do to get to clean electricity.
Edward Key served in the U.S. Navy, led the building of the nuclear reactors powering the USS Carl Vinson aircraft carrier, and sees nuclear energy as a solution to much of the country's energy issues.
With the understanding that there is demand that will increase, whether it be through data centers, AI, is nuclear the answer?
So when you're adding multiple data centers, you're straining what's an already strained system in a lot of parts of the country. You're going to have to add new capacity for generation. You're going to have to add new transmission lines. and other things to meet that demand.
How dire is the situation?
Well, you probably saw the Texas events when they had the big freeze a few years ago. It was very tight. Blackouts happened. We were close to that this last summer in the heat and the summer peaks. We haven't built a lot of big power plants for a while, and as demand grows, that gets tighter and tighter.
The most recent nuclear facility to go online is located in Georgia at the Vogtle plant, where taxpayers picked up a big chunk of the tab. Utility operator Georgia Power borrowed $12 billion from the Department of Energy, or DOE, to add 2 additional reactors to its fleet, making Vogtle the largest nuclear power plant in the U.S. In Pennsylvania, Constellation Energy will borrow an estimated $1.5 billion from the DOE to resurrect 3 Mile Island for Microsoft. Although the U.S. is the largest producer of nuclear power in the world, other countries are faster at bringing plants to life, in particular China and Russia. They're now leading in the construction of new nuclear facilities, and some of those plants are outside their borders and allowing the American adversaries economic footholds with other countries.
What does this mean for national defense?
If you want to build a nuclear power plant today, the Chinese are ones with the most experience and the most certainty about timing and cost. The Russians are building in their country. They're building in a lot of other countries by using a government-to-government lending approach. I mean, the Russians are very explicit about saying, we'll loan you money to build this nuclear plant. By the way, we'll also do an arms deal, we'll do an oil deal, we'll do this other deal.
But with Donald Trump's return to the presidency, the deal-maker-in-chief may try to shift the international balance of power in the global energy market and reassert U.S. influence. For Full Measure, I'm Scott Thuman in Washington, D.C.
Coming up on Full Measure, the truth is out there. There's been a huge jump in reports of sightings about mysterious flying objects, prompting airports to close and sparking state and federal investigations. The Biden administration largely brushed it all off as normal. Still, in recent years, the government has done a 180 on the topic of UFOs. After long denying them, they now admit they're a real thing. And now the Trump administration is promising more transparency. Will we finally learn the truth? Lisa Fletcher reports.
There it is again. It's so close.
Though we all now carry camera phones, the images and videos are still terrible, grainy, and hard to make out.
That is a drone.
Here, recent unexplained sightings of drones and groups of drones that have perplexed political leaders and worried many residents of East Coast states.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
The Pentagon's multi-million-dollar video systems, these taken by Navy F-18s, aren't much better in terms of quality. What these sightings have in common is uncertainty. There's clearly something out there, but no one is sure what. It was back in the 1950s and 1960s when UFOs really became a thing. Just as the U.S. and Soviet Union were competing up in space and fighting the Cold War down on Earth.
I knew it. This is an alien, and you guys are from some government agency trying to keep it under wraps.
Our seeming obsession with the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence spawning countless TV shows and movies. But in recent years, things have become serious with multiple congressional hearings. Late last year, John Kozlowski, the Pentagon's UFO chief, described what happened when a law enforcement officer saw a strange orb in the sky.
He saw a blacker than black object. He said it was about the size of a Prius, 4 to 6 feet wide. And as he got 40 to 60 meters away from the object, it tilted up about 45 degrees, and then it shot up vertically. He says 10 to 100 times faster than any drone he's ever seen before.
Also testifying recently, retired Navy Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet.
The now declassified video showed an unidentified object exhibiting flight and structural characteristics unlike anything in our arsenal.
What he's describing are a series of encounters between Navy jets and unidentified objects captured on camera in 2015 off the U.S. East Coast, but only declassified in 2020.
And this was a small orb-like object that was traveling at a relatively high rate of speed, but what was unique about it, it didn't have any control surfaces, there was no exhaust, and there was a formation of them.
Did we try to intercept any of these?
No, it's not really a good idea to try to shoot down something if you don't know what it is, but they were observed and reported.
But it's what happened next that inspired the retired admiral to wonder what the government really knows about UAPs.
The interesting thing about that experience for me is the next day that I received that email and all the 20 or so subordinate commanders, the email was deleted from my computer. And I knew, because of the fact that I've been read into special access programs, I pretty much concluded, okay, these UAP are being classified into a special access program.
What the public has started to learn in recent years has come through investigative reporting and whistleblowers like David Grush, a former intelligence officer.
I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program.
Do you believe David Grush's allegations?
100%. He's the person basically that broke this story that we've had a long-standing UAP crash retrieval program, that we have knowledge, even some of the biological remains of non-human intelligences that operate these objects.
Based on everything you know, how long do you think the U.S. government has had evidence of extraterrestrial life?
Decades.
In the summer of 2023, the Department of Defense contradicted Grush's claims, saying it hadn't discovered any information regarding the possession or reverse engineering of extraterrestrial materials. But that answer, a standard government denial used for decades, now seems increasingly at odds with evidence and multiple credible witnesses. For Full Measure, I'm Lisa Fletcher in Washington.
After a break, what's ahead next week on Full Measure? Coming up next week on Full Measure. California's tragic wildfires are both predicted and predictable and continue to regularly burn through federal tax dollars as critics ask about the surprising true causes and lodge accusations of failure.
Billions of dollars a year they spend on forest fires. And you know, there's a case with the environment. They're not allowed to rake their forests because you're not allowed to touch it.
Next week on Full Measure. Don't forget to check out my bestseller, Follow the Science, How Big Pharma Misleads, Obscures, and Prevails. Until next time, we'll be searching for more stories that hold powers accountable. Thanks for watching.